The basement door slammed shut with a sickening finality. Have fun in the dark, freak. Marcus's laughter echoed from the other side as I heard the lock click into place. Marcus, please. You know I'm claustrophobic. My voice cracked as I pounded on the door. At 13, I was 2 years younger than my cousin. But this wasn't about age anymore. This was about power. Lucas. My Uncle Tom's voice drifted from upstairs. Where are you, buddy? I opened my mouth to scream for help, but Marcus's threat from earlier rang in my ears. If you tell anyone, I'll make sure Aunt Sarah loses her job at Dad's company. My mom was a single parent, and that job was everything to us. He's at the park, Marcus called up cheerfully. Said he needed some air. The basement was pitch black. I fumbled for my phone, only to remember Marcus had taken it earlier, claiming he needed to borrow it. This wasn't the first time he'd locked me down here, but it was the first time he'd done it when it was getting dark outside. My parents thought sending me to stay with Uncle Tom's family while Mom recovered from surgery was the perfect solution. They didn't know that my cousin Marcus had turned from the fun playmate of our childhood into something else entirely, something darker. I slid down against the wall, trying to control my breathing. The darkness seemed to press in from all sides. Somewhere in the darkness, water dripped steadily. Drip, drip, drip. Each sound made me flinch. Hours passed. I could tell by the way the thin strip of light under the door faded to nothing. My legs had gone numb from sitting on the cold concrete floor, but I was too scared to move around in the dark. There were tools down here, sharp things that could hurt if I stumbled into them. Lucas, a new voice called down. I'm Patricia this time. Marcus says you're still at the park. It's dinner time, young man. I stayed silent. Last time I called for help, Marcus had made sure I regretted it. The bruises had taken weeks to fade, and I'd had to lie to my teachers about falling off my bike. But Ms. Reynolds, my English teacher, hadn't believed that excuse. She'd been watching, I realized now, taking notes, asking careful questions whenever I came to class with new accidents. He's probably at that weird kid Kevin's house, Marcus suggested above. You know how he is, Mom. No respect for family dinner time. More hours crawled by. My phone's absence meant I couldn't even see what time it was. The basement had no windows, no source of light at all, just darkness and that endless dripping. Then, finally, footsteps on the stairs. The lock clicked. Okay, freak. Show's over, Marcus announced, swinging the door open. Mom and Dad are asleep. Lucky for you. I'm feeling generous. I stumbled up the stairs, legs barely working. In the kitchen light, Marcus looked at me with that familiar mix of disgust and amusement. You look terrible, he smirked. Maybe wash your face before anyone sees you crying like a baby. I glanced at the microwave clock. 11:45 p.m. I'd been down there for almost 6 hours. The next morning at school, I could barely keep my eyes open. Every shadow made me jump. When Ms. Reynolds asked me to stay after class, I thought she was going to scold me for falling asleep during her lesson. Instead, she closed the classroom door and looked at me with concern. Lucas, I need you to be honest with me. What's really happening at your uncle's house? Nothing, I said automatically. Everything's fine. She pulled out a notebook. In the past 3 weeks, you've come to school with 2 unexplained bruises, a sprained wrist, and now you can barely stay awake. That's not nothing. I'm just clumsy, I mumbled, but my hands were shaking. Lucas, she said softly, I've already called CPS. They're going to want to talk to you, and I need you to tell them the truth.
Can you do that?
My heart stopped. No, he can't. My mom's job is secure, Ms. Reynolds interrupted. I've already spoken with the school board and your mother's union representative. Your uncle can't touch her job, no matter what happens. That's when I broke down. Everything poured out. The basement, the threats, the accidents that weren't accidents at all. Ms. Reynolds recorded everything on her phone, her face growing grimmer with each revelation. You're not going back there today, she said when I finished. We're going to the principal's office, and we're calling your mom right now. She's still recovering, but she would want to know about this, Ms. Reynolds said firmly. You're not alone anymore, Lucas. We're going to make this right. As we walked to the principal's office, I saw Marcus in the hallway. He started to smirk, then froze when he saw who I was with. For the first time, I saw fear flicker across his face. I straightened my shoulders and kept walking. The basement door was finally open, and I was stepping into the light. The principal's office buzzed with tension as I sat between Ms. Reynolds and Mrs. Garcia, the school counselor. Uncle Tom had arrived, his face red with anger, while a calm-faced woman in a gray suit introduced herself as Mrs. Bennett from Child Protective Services. "This is ridiculous," Uncle Tom sputtered. "Marcus and Lucas are like brothers. They play rough sometimes, sure, but—" "Mr. Walker," Mrs. Bennett interrupted, "we have documented evidence of systematic abuse. Your nephew spent 6 hours locked in your basement last night. Would you like to explain that?" "He's making it up." Uncle Tom's fist hit the desk. "Lucas has always been imaginative. Just ask his mother." I did. My mom's voice cut through the room like steel. She stood in the doorway, pale but steady, supported by our neighbor who'd driven her. Despite her recent surgery, she'd come immediately when the school called. "Sarah," Uncle Tom's tone changed to honey sweet, "you should be resting. This is all just a misunderstanding." "Is this a misunderstanding, too?" Ms. Reynolds placed her phone on the principal's desk and pressed play. Security footage from the school's cameras filled the screen, showing Marcus cornering me in empty hallways, shoving me into lockers when teachers weren't looking. "I installed a recording app on Lucas's phone 3 weeks ago," Ms. Reynolds continued. "After I noticed the pattern of injuries, it captured everything last night, including Marcus taking the phone and Lucas's calls for help from the basement." The color drained from Uncle Tom's face. "That's illegal. You can't record." "Actually," Mrs. Bennett interjected, "in cases of suspected child abuse, it's perfectly admissible evidence." My mom crossed the room and knelt beside my chair, her movements careful but determined. "Why didn't you tell me, baby?" "Marcus said Uncle Tom would fire you," I whispered. "We need that job." "No job is worth this," she said firmly, then turned to her brother. "Tom, how could you let this happen? I trusted you to protect my son while I recovered. Instead, you let your own son terrorize him. Did you know? Did Patricia know?" Before Uncle Tom could answer, the door opened again. Marcus stood there with his mother, Patricia, both looking shocked at the crowd in the office. "What's going on?" Patricia asked, but Marcus's eyes were fixed on the security footage still playing silently on the screen. "Your son has been abusing his cousin," Mrs. Bennett stated bluntly. "We have evidence of multiple incidents, including false imprisonment last night." Patricia's hand flew to her mouth. For once, my cousin didn't have a smooth lie ready. He stood frozen, watching his carefully constructed world crumble. "It was just jokes," he finally muttered. "Lucas is so sensitive about everything. Locking someone in a dark basement for 6 hours isn't a joke," Ms. Reynolds said sharply. "Neither is threatening them to keep quiet." Mrs. Bennett cleared her throat. "Given the severity of the situation, we're opening a full investigation. Lucas, is there somewhere else you can stay for now?" "He's coming home," Mom said firmly. "I have help with my recovery now, and he never should have left." "You can't prove anything," Marcus suddenly burst out. "It's his word against mine." "Actually," Ms. Reynolds pulled out her notebook, "I have documented every incident, every unexplained injury, every behavior change for the past 3 months. 27 separate incidents, Marcus. And now we have recordings, too." The next hour was a blur of statements and paperwork. Mrs. Bennett took detailed notes, while Mrs. Garcia gently asked me questions about other incidents. Mom sat beside me, her hand tight around mine. As I finally let out all the secrets I'd been keeping, Uncle Tom tried to minimize everything, calling it boys being boys. But even Patricia had turned away from him, horror growing on her face as the evidence mounted. "There will be consequences," Mrs. Bennett announced at the end. "Marcus will need psychological evaluation and counseling. And Mr. Walker, your negligence in this situation is a serious concern." As we left the office, Marcus caught my "I won last time." The power had shifted. He wasn't the one in control anymore. For the first time, I saw him for what he was, Not a monster, but a troubled kid who'd been allowed to become cruel. "Let's go home," Mom said softly, and I felt tears of relief spring to my eyes. Home, where I didn't have to be afraid of the dark. Ms. Reynolds touched my shoulder as we left. "You're one of the bravest students I've ever had, Lucas. Remember that." Walking to our neighbor's car, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. The basement door was locked forever now, but this time, I was on the right side of it. 3 months after the basement incident, I sat in Dr. Carter's office for my weekly therapy session. The walls were painted a calming blue, nothing like the darkness of that basement. "How are the nightmares?" she asked, her kind eyes studying my face. "Better," I answered truthfully. "I only had one this week, and I used the breathing techniques you taught me." The investigation had revealed more than just Marcus's abuse. It turned out Uncle Tom had a history of covering up his son's incidents at their previous school, too. They'd moved here after Marcus had seriously hurt another student, but the records had been quietly buried. "And how are things at school?" Dr. Carter continued. "I thought about the changes there. Marcus had been transferred to a specialized program for troubled teens. His absence in the hallways had lifted a weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying." "Different," I said. "Better. Kevin and I started a support group, actually, for kids who've dealt with bullying or abuse. Ms. Reynolds is our faculty advisor." Dr. Carter smiled. "That's wonderful, Lucas. Using your experience to help others is a powerful form of healing." The support group had been Kevin's idea. He'd been Marcus's target before I came along. After everything came out, he'd been the first to reach out to me. Now we had 15 regular members and met twice a week during lunch. At home, things had changed too. Mom had recovered fully from her surgery, and our relationship had grown stronger. No more secrets between us. We even started a tradition of leaving small lights on throughout the house at night. "Not because I was afraid," she said, "but because everyone deserves to know there's always light available if they need it." Uncle Tom had tried to reach out several times, sending apologetic messages through various family members. Mom had blocked his number after he attempted to minimize the situation one last time, suggesting we all start fresh and put the past behind us. "Have you heard anything from Marcus?" Dr. Carter asked carefully. I nodded slowly. His counselor at the new school asked if I'd be willing to read a letter he wrote, part of his therapy program. "And how do you feel about that?" "Scared," I admitted, "but also ready, maybe." Ms. Reynolds offered to sit with me while I read it. The letter had arrived yesterday, sitting unopened on my desk at home. Part of me wanted to burn it, but another part needed to know if Marcus could understand what he'd done. After my session, Mom was waiting outside. We had another appointment, this one at the youth center, where I'd be speaking to a group about recognizing and reporting abuse. Mrs. Bennett from CPS had asked if I'd be willing to share my story. "You don't have to do this," Mom reminded me as we drove there. "I want to," I said firmly. If Ms. Reynolds hadn't been paying attention, if she hadn't documented everything, I might still be living in fear. The youth center was full of kids my age, some looking as scared as I used to feel. I took a deep breath and walked to the front of the room, catching sight of Ms. Reynolds sitting supportively in the back. "My name is Lucas," I started, my voice stronger than I expected. 3 months ago, I thought keeping quiet about abuse meant protecting my family. I was wrong. Silence only protects the abusers. As I shared my story, I saw recognition in some faces, fear in others. After I finished, several kids came up to talk privately. Each one had a story, a secret, a basement of their own. That evening, I finally opened Marcus's letter. Mom sat nearby, ready if I needed her, while Ms. Reynolds joined us via video call. "Dear Lucas," it began, "I'm sorry. Those words feel small compared to what I did, but they're true. My counselor is helping me understand why I hurt you, but understanding doesn't excuse it. I was angry about things that had nothing to do with you, and I took that anger out on you because I could, because Dad always covered for me, and that made me think I was untouchable. I was wrong. I'm learning to be different. I don't expect forgiveness, but I need you to know that what happened wasn't your fault. It was mine." Tears slid down my cheeks, But they weren't tears of fear this time. They were tears of release. You okay? Mom asked softly. I nodded. Yeah, I think I am. Later that night, as I got ready for bed, I looked at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. The scared kid from 3 months ago was gone. In his place stood someone stronger, someone who'd found his voice in the darkness and used it to help others find their way up. 2. I turned off the main light but left the small night light glowing, not because I needed it, but because it reminded me that even the darkest basements can't stay dark forever. Not when you have people willing to shine a light and help you find your way.